Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast, where we provide you with your weekly diagnosis of everything fantasy football. Whether it's season-long leagues, dynasty, DFS, or sometimes even IDP, we got you covered all year long. What's good? You know the vibes. Jon Jeune here at the real Jon Jeune _FF, and I'm back with the Week 6 Fantasy Football Matchup Show. Again, y'all, it's getting down to the crunch time. We are almost halfway through the fantasy regular season, so it's time to just keep pressing forward. Again, can't get too complacent. You can't if you're whether you're 5-0 and or 4-1. You feel like you got a pretty good team. You just got to keep churning out the bottom of that roster, keep grinding, keep trying to get these wins. If it's you got people on bye weeks, right? Like, for example, some people will be like, "Oh, I'm just gonna give up the week," right? If you can get a win, right? Because you never know what's gonna happen. If you are 1-4, 0-5, 2-3, right? Like, don't give up. Don't say, "Oh, well, it's been a fun season." Nah, we just gotta keep going. Gotta keep pressing forward. Gotta keep on it. So, and hopefully, I'm helping you guys do that, right? So, let's kind of jump into everything, right, with the matchup show. But before we do that, let's break down where we were at last week, right? So last week we gave out 13 recommendations. Of those 13 recommendations, we had 6 guys beat their ECR by 10 spots or more. We had another guy beat his ECR outright, but we'll talk about why that might have counted for a little bit more than just a hit. We had 3 misses. We had 3 big misses, and one of which left their game with an injury. So I think last week was a solid week. We'll kind of go through it, right? Because when you look at it, we had at the quarterback position, we had Sam Darnold, who was ranked as the quarterback 16. We had him, or obviously gave him out as a recommendation. He finishes the quarterback 3 on the week. So big week for him. Dak Prescott was the quarterback 11. We obviously said he needed to be a play. So he finishes the quarterback 2. So technically that counts as a hit, but then we'll call it a big hit, right? Because you're starting the second highest scoring quarterback on the week. It's a pretty good week, unless you had to face the top quarterback on the week, obviously. But a big week still for Dak Prescott. And then at the running back position, we had Michael Carter, running back 36, finishes the running back 9. Solid week for him. We were pretty adamant to plant the flag on Michael Carter over Amari DiMarcado. Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt, he's a guy we highlighted as well. Finished as the running back 5 after coming into the week ranked as the running back 31, according to Fantasy Pros expert consensus. Darren Waller, he was the tight end 6 after being ranked as the tight end 16. Jordan Addison was the wide receiver 19 after being ranked the wide receiver 31. Stephon Diggs had a big week, the wide receiver 4 after being ranked wide receiver 29. So those were the hits. I thought it was some pretty solid hits. In terms of the misses, we'll start with the ones that we just edged out, right? Bo Nix finishes the quarterback 15 after being ranked 13. So, not the worst day for Bo Nix, but obviously we want better than that. Chris Olave, I think he's just perpetually the wide receiver 27, or right outside the wide receiver 24 range, right? But he was ranked wide receiver 22. He was my start of the week. Just was not the upside that you want from a wide receiver. So, the targets, the volume, still all there, but we just need some more upside and those big plays. Trey Tucker, Trey Tucker had a solid day, double-digit PPR points, finished ranked as a wide receiver 38 after being ranked 35. And then, those were all the edged, the just the misses. And when we talk about big misses, I mean, Jamison Williams, like that was terrible. Wide receiver 89 after being ranked a wide receiver 30 on the week. Really had faith that he would be able to make an impact in this game. Unfortunately, that didn't come to fruition. Woody Marks, that was who saw that one coming, right? Running back 53 after being ranked the running back 21. I think we had 2.4 PPR points. We saw Nick Chubb, get a lot of usage in that backfield. So, that one didn't really hit the way we wanted. And then Brenton Strange, he left the game injured, finishing as a tight end 39. We also had some guys that, that we, in that Jets Cowboys game when we talked about Dak Prescott. I didn't officially write them up, but Mason Taylor, we talked about him. He finished as a tight end 1 on the week, 17.5 PPR points. Jalen Tolbert, we also talked about. That one obviously didn't come to fruition there. I think the process was right. The player was who just landed on the wrong player, as Ryan Flournoy had a big day. And then Isaiah Davis, we also talked about, and he didn't provide much value, although he was on the field and whatnot. So, that's all we got from the recap from week 5. But week 6, hoping to get as good a week, if not better than this, right? So, let's see how it goes. But, do want to highlight, obviously, for those that are, watching on YouTube, Twitch, X, definitely appreciate you. If you're not watching on those platforms, or you're not subscribed, just make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit the notification button so you get a notification whenever I drop any episode. But it is always going to be Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern. So if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play right now, definitely appreciate you. Or whatever podcast platform you're listening to, appreciate you. Just make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you click that notification button. But the other thing I do want to highlight is if you are a patron, definitely want to say thank you as well. Because you guys are doing a lot to help the show grow. And we got a great community over there. So if you guys want to go ahead and join that community, patreon.com/FFDX. We have a free membership tier where you get access to the weekly cheat sheet that comes out every week, because that's what weekly means. But on Tuesdays, it comes out. It's your one-stop resource for waiver wires, player matchups, trends, rankings. I got buy, sells, and stashes in there, right? So definitely a good opportunity this week. Or definitely a good opportunity for you guys to join the free Patreon and access that cheat sheet. We also have a paid tier as well. The FFDX supporter tier, yes, the name changed, but the content did not. Where there, you'll get a weekly waiver wire article. You'll get my expanded rankings, not just what's in the cheat sheet, and then you'll also get access to a Sunday morning Q&A, and we're working on more stuff as well there for that FFDX supporter tier. But if you guys want to get more access to me, more access to what I'm thinking, outside of just 2 times a week on the pod, then definitely join a Patreon, whether you're joining as a free member or the FFDX supporter member, which I failed to mention. FFDX supporter member tier, that is like the cheapest, best. It's the best value you're gonna get, right? It's $1 a month, right? It's not like it's literally not gonna cost you much at all, and you'll get all that right there, right? So definitely encourage you to do that. So yeah, we'll see how we can keep growing it. But I'm trying to create a community where you guys, whoever's in that Patreon, they're gonna get access to things before anybody else gets it from me. So that's what I'm trying to build over there. So if you want to join that, you could follow in the show notes or go to patreon.com/FFDX. So all right, let's move on to the games here. And let's talk about the game in London. We've got the Denver Broncos facing off against the New York Jets. Um, let's talk quarterback Bo Nix. He's the ECR quarterback 13. The Jets have allowed the 12th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks over their last 3 games. The Jets defense allows the third most EPA per pass play to opposing offenses. This is a good spot here for Bo Nix, who's had 2 QB1 performances through 5 weeks so far. So definitely like that. And also, obviously he has the ability to use his legs, which is great. So definitely, looking forward to him as a play this week. And we'll stay with the Denver offense, and let's talk about Denver wide receiver Troy Franklin. He's the ECR PPR wide receiver 46. The Jets have allowed the 17th most PPR points to opposing wide receivers over their last 3 games. And like I said with Bo Nix, they've allowed the third most EPA per pass play to opposing offenses. And I think this is a good spot here for Franklin, who, like I said in the waiver show on Tuesday, will probably not have to see a lot of again, you guys know him as Sauce Gardner. I will call him Ahmad Gardner until he gets an interception this year. Ahmad Gardner it is. But there's Gardner follows the number 1 receiver, which is Cortland Sutton, and Troy Franklin is going to have opportunities against the rest of this Jets secondary. So I think he's a solid play this week. Could be in line for double-digit PPR points. So let's move on to this next game here, and let's talk LA Chargers tight end Oronde Gadsden. And if I'm being honest, there wasn't really anyone that I was super interested or excited to start in this game, to recommend in this game. Actually, I'm gonna add somebody here, but we'll talk about that in a second. But Rondé Gadsden, there isn't really, you know, uh, not excited about anybody playing on anybody outside the thresholds. But Gadsden stands out to me here. Last time we went to him, it didn't really work out. But last week against Washington, Gadsden played a season high in snaps, ran a season high in routes, adding the fact that Hampton, who was involved quite a bit in the pass game, will miss time. That leaves more targets in the shorter areas of the field for Gadsden. And the matchup here is a nice one as uh, Miami allows the 8th most PPR points per game. And going to gonna add here, we're gonna talk about let's talk LA Chargers running back Hassan Haskins. I didn't have him prepared as a guy that we'll talk about, but I understand that some of you guys may be on the fence. So, let's discuss him really quickly here. So, Hassan Haskins, similar to last week, right, where it was like, which Arizona Cardinals running back do you trust, right? Is it going to be, um, is it going to be, in the case of last week, we were wondering, would it be, Amari DeMarcado? Would it be Michael Carter? So, we had those questions last week. But this week, the similar question we're asking Hassan Haskins, or we asking Kamani Vidal. So for me personally, I'm leaning towards Hassan Haskins. If you listen to the waiver wire show earlier in the week, you would know that that's where I'm trending. I'm willing to plant my flag this week. So um, he profiles more as the ball carrier here in this offense. And, I'm willing to go ahead and plant my flag there with Hassan Haskins. Miami offense, obviously, we just saw what they did with this Miami defense, rather. We just saw what they did with Rico Dowdle, allowing the most PPR points to him on the week. Over the last 3 weeks, Miami allows the sixth most PPR points to opposing running backs. So Haskins, who is the running back 36 according to expert consensus rankings, I feel like he, deserves a spot, inside that top 24. I think just based off volume and touchdown opportunity, he'll help get you there. So, yeah, just it's probably a little uneasy, but the same thing we saw with Michael Carter last week. Just follow the volume. If he's going to get the volume, which again we're a little unsure about, that's why I think he's ranked this way. I think it's people hedging, between him and Vidal. So I again planting my flag with Haskins. So all right, let's move on to the next game here. Let's talk LA Rams versus the Baltimore Ravens, and let's talk LA Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford. He's the expert consensus QB 11. Um, Again, I don't know how this happened, right? It was a similar thing last week with Dak Prescott. Baltimore allows the second most fantasy points allowed to the position over the last 3 weeks. I'm not sure who I need to convince here about Matthew Stafford. I had a very passionate, uh, you know, pound the table for Matthew Stafford moment on the waiver show, which involved pancakes and syrup. So, you definitely go back and listen to that if you hadn't. But again, not sure who I need to convince here, but we will discuss this a little bit later, I promise. And again, if you know, you know. Let's talk the next game here. Let's talk the Dallas Cowboys against the Carolina Panthers, and let's talk Carolina quarterback Bryce Young. He's the ECR PPR quarterback 18. Now, I don't think you need to go here in a 12-team league, a 12-team one quarterback league. But if you're in a deeper league or a super flex league, you could look to Bryce Young, who has a matchup against a Dallas defense, allowing the most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Right. So I don't love the idea of playing Bryce Young. You never feel comfortable really doing that, because the floor sometimes feels like it's the same. I was going to make a joke about how, yeah, Bryce Young being vertically challenged, his house, probably his floor and his ceiling are in the same place, if you catch my drift. But anyway, from a fantasy perspective, his floor and ceiling feel very much in the same place. There was that stretch last year where he was absolutely balling. But right now, it seems, again, back to the conservative Bryce Young that we had seen. But this Dallas offense, again, allowing the most PPR points per game to opposing quarterbacks, 28.4 PPR points over their last 3 weeks to opposing quarterbacks. I think this is a good spot here for you to lean on Bryce Young if you need to go there. Now, let's talk about the New England Patriots going on to take on the New Orleans Saints. And let's talk New England running back Travion Henderson. He's the ECR PPR running back 30. All right, y'all. Now, if you are subscribed to the Patreon, right, the free Patreon, and you had access to the cheat sheet, and you have access, or I have access to the cheat sheet, you would have seen that Travion Henderson was a buy candidate for me this week, right? Now, again, when I wrote it up, I did, like I said, I didn't have any stats or any utilization trends that would make you feel any better. Obviously, we know the Antonio Gibson injury. This probably creates more opportunities, but I kind of likened it. Said that it reminded me, Travion Henderson's current situation reminded me of DeAndre Swift's situation, his rookie year, right? DeAndre Swift through the first 5 weeks of the season hadn't really been, hadn't fantasy managers wanted more, right? They wanted more. They wanted to see him utilized a little bit more. They want to see him on the field, get those opportunities, those touches, because when he did, he was doing well with them, right? He averaged 10.4 PPR points per game. Henderson through 5 weeks is averaging 8 PPR points of just over 8 PPR points per game. Now Swift scored 2 touchdowns, which helped bring the average up a little bit, while Henderson's only scored 1 touchdown. So it's very similar in my mind, right? Like when you just look at it from the production standpoint and the reason for the lack of production. But then out of the bye week, DeAndre Swift, uh, ended up with a game with 27 PPR points, right? Now Henderson doesn't have a bye week here, but I do feel like what applies to that situation that I think applies to this current situation is that you had a talented second round running back who was not getting as much opportunities as fantasy managers wanted. I think DeAndre Swift managers at that time were a little frustrated. And some of them might have given up, right? Like I think some people are giving up on Henderson, right? If you just look in Yahoo or you check the roster trends, like you'll see that his rostership is dropping. And I'm saying I would hold on, and I think the talent is going to win out. But on to this matchup, let's talk about it, right? Like I said here, this could leave me with egg all over my face. Or we could be celebrating like Bill Krosky Merritt last week. So talent usually wins out, and with Gibson out for the year, that makes this potentially 3-man backfield into a potential 2-man backfield, which leaves here more opportunities for Henderson. So again, the same way last week, there was no trends, there was no data to cue us on Bill. It was more of just like, hey, he's taking a third of the reps. He's performing with them. He's doing well. He's the most talented running back in that backfield. Like essentially, eventually, the cream rises to the top, and that's what we did with Bill. So I'm hoping that we can get some similar magic here with Trayvon Henderson. All right, let's move on to the next matchup here. Let's talk Arizona Cardinals against the Indianapolis Colts, and let's talk Arizona running back Michael Carter. He's the ECR PPR running back 25. Again, we talked about Carter last week. He came through in a big way for us. And while the matchup isn't as good this week, Indianapolis is 29th the last 3 weeks against opposing running backs. The opportunities could rise, especially if DeMarcado's mistakes cost him some opportunities, right? So think you can lean on Michael Carter for another week. I think you could probably, lean on him for the remainder of Trey Benson's absence. Let's move on to the next matchup here. Let's talk the Cleveland Browns against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and let's talk Cleveland Browns tight end Harold Fannin Jr. Fannin scored a touchdown last week. Hasn't seen, the target share that he saw earlier in the week, or the target volume that he saw earlier in the season, I should say. But I do like this matchup quite a bit. Pittsburgh has allowed the third most PPR points to opposing tight ends over their last 3 games. I do prefer Njoku in this game if I could. But the market is pretty high on Njoku coming into this game. I think he's like the tight end 8 according to Fantasy Pros. I pretty high on Njoku. Not as high as you guys might be anticipating the way I'm talking about him, but I did consider him for a start of the week. With how good this matchup is and how well he's done lately. Okay, so let's talk Seattle versus Jacksonville. Let's talk Seattle quarterback Sam Darnold. He's the ECR PPR quarterback 16. Well, we had Darnold in literally this same spot last week. He was a quarterback 16, and we said, hey, he's got to be a play. Darnold had the biggest game of the season last week. I don't expect him to replicate that, but I do think that he could have another big game here against the Jags defense that's allowed the 7th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks over their last 3 games. So Sam Darnold, he's playing football as well as anybody right now, at the quarterback position. I think I talked about it in the waiver show, just if you guys want to feel a little bit more comfy about it. It wasn't in the waiver show. It was in the cheat sheet where I talked about it. So this is why you guys need to get access to the cheat sheet if you don't already, because you get stuff like this, right? So Sam Darnold coming off his best game of the season, looks even better than last year. Um, third amongst all qualified quarterbacks in air yards per attempt. So he's aggressively pushing the ball down the field. He's first in completion rate over expected, while also being fourth in EPA per dropback. So Darnold playing really well, playing some really good football right now. So I think you just continue to lean on him if you need help at the quarterback position. Obviously, he's also got JSN, who's a fantastic receiving option. So I think that obviously helps. And it's more of like it's like the pancakes and syrup thing again. Anyway, let's move on to the Tennessee Titans against the Las Vegas Raiders, and let's talk Tennessee wide receiver Calvin Ridley. He's the ECR PPR wide receiver 30. Now, Ridley's coming off his best game of the season, saw 10 targets for 5 catches, 131 receiving yards. Those are all season highs for Ridley. And now he has a matchup against the Las Vegas defense, who over their last 3 games have allowed the 8th most PPR points to opposing wide receivers. So Ridley's a guy that I was pretty high on coming into the year. Apparently, the market was higher on him than I was because I literally could not draft one share of Calvin Ridley. And it didn't really work out the way that I think I or others thought that it would. So it's kind of been disappointing, but this is promising here, right? The game that he's coming off of, and could start a trend here of some pretty solid production here for Calvin Ridley. All right, let's talk Green Bay against Cincinnati. Cincinnati Bengals trade for Joe Flacco in the middle of the week, so that made things a little interesting. But we'll stay on the Green Bay side. We'll talk Green Bay wide receiver Matthew Golden. He's the ECR PPR wide receiver 37. Cincinnati is 7th in terms of EPA allowed per pass play. So they allow the 7th most EPA allowed per pass play, allowing the 16th most PPR points to opposing wide receivers over their last 3 games. And in week 4, which was the last time we saw Golden, he played a season high in snaps, ran a season high in routes, and saw a season high in targets, which led to his most productive day of the year and his career, honestly, him being a rookie. But if you've been listening to me for a while, you'll know that there's one thing I always look for. There's one thing I always love to use as a reason to play a player. It's rookies out of the bye week, right? You got again, I have no data to support this theory, but rookies out of the bye week, they tend to, like a bye week for an NFL team, there's a lot of self-scouting done. There's a lot of, film study that's done. So they look at they're evaluating their personnel, evaluating their play calling. So when you've got these rookies who are making plays on limited opportunities, the coaches, they go back, they realize that, and it gives them an opportunity to adjust, gives them an opportunity to, go ahead and try to get that player a little bit more involved, right? So Golden was a guy that we talked about actually in the cheat sheet for week 5 as a buy candidate, because, he's somebody who I do believe is very talented. I like his offensive situation, and I like his matchup here in this game. So, all right, let's move on to the next game here. We'll talk the San Francisco 49ers against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I got quite a few options here in this game. So we'll start with San Francisco quarterback Mac Jones, who's expected to make the start here for the 49ers against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Jones is ranked as the quarterback 19. Jones has been pretty solid in spot duty, 21-point outings over his last 3 games. Again, now set to face off against a Tampa Bay defense that's allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks over their last 3 games. Again, I'll probably just keep referencing the cheat sheet because there's some really good stuff in here. But he's playing some really good football right now. He's 12th in EPA per drop back here. So amongst quarterbacks, so Mac Jones playing some really good football right now. And then we'll talk about San Francisco wide receiver Kendrick Bourne. He's the ECR PPR wide receiver 42. Now, he had a massive day in week 5, 10 catches on 11 targets for 142 receiving yards. Now, Ricky Pearsall and Jon Jennings, they were obviously out in that game. Ricky Pearsall looks unlikely to go. Jon Jennings has a little bit more of an opportunity here, but if one or both of those guys do miss time, we're looking at another opportunity here for Kendrick Bourne to be, to pretty much carry the lunch pail here for, these 49ers pass catchers outside of Christian McCaffrey, of course. And outside of another guy who we'll talk about right now, San Francisco tight end Jake Tongas, ECR PPR tight end 17, coming off an 11 target game, back-to-back games with a touchdown. Tongas, he might very well benefit from some of the absences here of the 49ers passing attack. Right. Same thing that kind of pretty much applies to Kendrick Bourne. Obviously, we know Kittle is still out. Will probably return next week. According to Kyle Shanahan, he has a good shot to do that. So we get one more week of Tonjas here against the Tampa Bay defense line, the 6th most PPR points to opposing tight ends over their last 3 games. All right, let's move on to Sunday Night Football. We'll talk the Detroit Lions against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now let's talk Kansas City wide receiver Tyquan Thornton. He's the ECR PPR wide receiver 58. Thornton makes plays for this Kansas City passing attack. Just seems like he deserves a consistent role in this offense. And I think he's earned that. And this matchup here is a good one against the Detroit defense, allowing the 15th most PPR points to opposing wide receivers over their last 3 games, especially in a game with the 2nd highest total on the week here. So definitely going to trust in Thornton to get it done as a low-end flex play. Moving on to the next matchup here, the first of a Monday night doubleheader. We've got the Atlanta Falcons hosting the Buffalo Bills. And let's talk Atlanta tight end Kyle Pitts. He's the ECR PPR tight end 13. Now, I know people may not believe this, but Pitts through 5 weeks is the tight end 11 in PPR points per game, having finished as a tight end 1 twice and in the top 5 once. This matchup on paper doesn't look particularly great, but Pitts is second at the position in route participation. So in a game tied for the 2nd highest total, I want a piece of this game here, this total, and Pitts allows you to do that for sure here. Moving on to the next matchup, the second of the Monday night doubleheader, we've got the Chicago Bears traveling to Washington to take on the Commanders. And let's talk Washington tight end Zach Ertz. Now, he's the ECR PPR tight end 14 coming into this game. And Ertz goose-egged last week, but I think that was more a function of the game script and the run game going so well for Washington. So this is a game with the highest total on the week and in a matchup against the Chicago defense, allowing the 9th most PPR points to opposing tight ends over their last 3 games. This seems like a good spot here for Ertz to bounce back. All right, y'all. That is it for the Week 6 matchups. Let's talk Week 6 starts of the week here. So we'll start with the quarterback position like we always do. And like I promised, here's your syrup, Matthew Stafford. He's been on fire. Back-to-back games with at least 375 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Now faces a Ravens defense allowing the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks over their last 3 games. Obviously, you've got the Rams passing attack, which includes Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, and those guys are rolling. So if the pancake is rolling, the syrup's got to be rolling too. So Stafford has legit top 5 upside this week. Moving on to the running back position, let's talk Las Vegas running back Ashton Jeanty against Tennessee. It's been a roller coaster for Jeanty, a roller coaster rookie year for Jeanty, but he's heating up, finishing as the RB1 and the RB15 in the last 2 weeks after just one top 24 finish in the first 3 games. And he now draws a Tennessee defense that's allowed the most fantasy points, PPR points to opposing running backs over their last 3 games. I think the breakout is real. Keep riding the rookie here. So continue to lean on him. Let's talk for the wide receiver start of the week. Carolina wide receiver Ted Roya McMillan versus Dallas. Look, if you've been if you've been a Patreon member for a while, you've been accessing the cheat sheet since its inception. I've been pounding the table here for T-Mac as a buy low candidate, and this might be your last chance to do it. He's 8th in targets, 6th in routes, 14th in yards, but he hasn't scored a touchdown yet. Still sitting as a wide receiver 24 in total points uh, after only having one top 24 finish all year. Now, against the Dallas defense, allowing the most PPR points to opposing wide receivers over their last 3 games, I think we got a breakout game here coming for Tedoroya McMillan. Moving on to the next start of the week, we're talking tight end start of the week. Let's talk Tucker Kraft of the Green Bay Packers going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, Kraft hasn't had a tight end 1 finish since his massive week 2 performance, but this is the spot to bounce back here. The Bengals have allowed the most PPR points to opposing tight ends over the last 3 weeks. Green Bay's offense has been leaning more on Kraft recently with some of the injuries, obviously with the injury to Jaden Reed. So I expect a strong outing in this matchup for Kraft. All right, y'all. That is all I have. Remember, patreon.com/FFDX. You can follow in the show notes. Appreciate y'all for rocking with me, and good luck in your matchups this week. And we'll see y'all next week for the Waiver Show on Tuesday.